section, you have probably heard about the risk assessment and the mapping. Anything to do with your digital protection will revolve around what you call your information, what you call your communication. It must have all those components in there, in that particular process. The services you're using, the devices you're using, when you're using them, where you're using them. What's ironic, and speaking from a forensic security point of view, I would be more interested in whom you talk to or when you talk to them than actually what you say to them, because that actually ends up giving much more information and much more, for lack of a better word, much more metadata or that personal identifying information. So it can actually be able to tell me everything that's happening in there. So when it comes to an organization security, whom you are talking to and how you are talking to them matters way much more than actually what you're saying to them. Like, let's take an example. In the US, usually when they're investigating an organization before a merger happens, they look at their communication and they look how much communication did they have with the company they're planning to merge with, because that can tell if there was any form of insider trading or if there was any form of colluding before something happened. When it comes to, say, organizations here and looking at civil society, in case there was to be, let's say, there's a case going on in court, and information from you as an organization is requested, the investigator or the forensic analyst will be looking way much more at whom you are talking to, when you are talking to them, and in a way, what devices you are using. So of course, looking at the risk assessment bit of it, you have to consider who can access that data, what risks does it bring in case that data is accessed. I hear a lot of times NGOs and civil society organizations tell that our information is public information and all that goes with it. And I tell them, yes, it might be public, but who can do something to that information, or if it's altered and it portrays a wrong picture, then what ends up happening in that space? So it's something that, of course, you need to look at. And above all, what would you like to protect as an organization? I don't agree with the philosophy where an organization says we have to protect everything. Because if you have to protect everything, then you ought to have a lot of resources, which for most times, not many organizations have. So it's very, very key for you to identify what are the things that you critically need to protect. And of course, these are just some layers that you need to look at. I know throughout the week you're probably, or I'm saying the week, but yesterday and earlier today, you probably looked at what layers you have to look into. So even if it comes to an organization, whenever you think about your digital security or digital protection, it does not make a lot of sense for you to only think about the technology, but you must begin by thinking about your physical premises themselves. Where are your computers stored? I was recently giving a training to an organization, and they told me, well, Ronald, we're concerned about our information, and we suspect in case something bad happens to our information, we probably wouldn't know what to do. So I asked them, what devices do you use? And he said, oh, we're using the very same laptops that you are seeing us with. And I asked, what's your policy on managing the laptops? Their response was, you go with the laptop everywhere. You go with it home, you go with it for a meeting, you come back to work with it. And immediately I told them, because you're doing that, you have literally opened yourself up to all spaces. And that's where a bit of the discussion comes in. As an organization, and you think about security, should you consider a hybrid kind of system whereby you have cloud and then you have offline, deciding on what do I keep in the cloud, what do I keep offline? But yeah, as we go in the discussion, that's part of what we are going to discuss. You probably heard the phrase, people, processes, technology. Yes, it's a fancy term. And it's literally what defines digital security, because I like to put it just saying that just series of processes you put in place to become way more secure as you use technology. Many organizations think about technology in terms of, or rather digital security in terms of, we have the most fancy, we have the newest devices. We bought new laptops, they're the latest, we are running smartphones, we just bought them, they're running the most up-to-date Android system or iPhone. I've found people saying, oh, for us we're a Mac shop, meaning our laptops are Macs, our phones are iPhones, so we are safe in that way. But then I asked them that, what are the processes that you have put in place in the event something does go wrong? How are you going to recover from that particular space? And majority of the time, people have the technology. Well, the people are there, the technology is there, but the processes are lacking. And this is where we people who look at system security, or even the hackers, that's exactly the space that they want to exploit. Not the technology, not the people, but the processes you have in there and how the people keep interacting with them to make yourselves a bit more secure. I like to look at this as my protection process, and this is the protection process which I literally advise for organizations to look at. Okay, so you notice I have protection being equal to your detection and your ability to respond. I give this kind of example. At Frontline, we receive a lot of grant requests, and so many of them are, we want CCTV cameras to secure our premises, we want to have electric fencing just to increase our security. And whenever those applications come to me, when the grant people receive them and they say, Ronald, these people asking for dictator things, and they're in Africa, what's your opinion? My usual question is that, why have they asked for cameras? What exactly are they going to do? What's the purpose of CCTV cameras? Because for most people think, the fact that you have CCTV cameras, you are immediately secure. Yet, from a security standpoint, CCTV cameras or closed-circuit television cameras are simply for surveillance, nothing else. They're not going to give you any security. A CCTV camera will never stop a burglar from getting into your building. In fact, the moment they see it, they're probably going to just break it, and meaning that you are going to have to spend some more money going to it. So my advice is, anytime you decide on a protection approach to go for, your ability to detect what's happening. So let's create this scenario. You decide you want to have CCTV cameras. If you put them on your building, then you should also have a means to detect that something has gone wrong. Like, there should be someone responsible for literally supervising and monitoring this footage. And that's why, like, when I'm working in hotels, I'm always concerned, like, where are the cameras and how much are they looking at me along there? Like, I'm sure you have seen so many cameras, but you have probably never seen the person who is observing them. And if you really want to see if they're being monitored, and I'm not saying do it, but you could also experiment, maybe try and tamper with the camera. See how fast the security will respond to come to you. Because that will tell you that someone is monitoring. There's a detection means that in the event you have touched the camera, an alarm maybe goes off, and then how quickly they react. So let me also put it for you when it comes to your office premises, and this is part of also when you're protecting your organization. A number of people invest in hiring security guards to come and protect their premises. But many people don't bother to say, this guard is right here. In the event that he was in distress, what's the process that should happen? How quickly will his colleagues come in? I've found organizations that decide, you know what, we're also going to put a panic button, especially near where the guard is. That's a plus. So that means that anytime the guard is at risk, then he will simply press a panic button, and there should be a response. But then I also advise organizations that when you're looking at your security as an organization, and you decide, let's have that means of alert, you should occasionally test it, or even put it within the clause of the security company that every year, maybe twice or 3 times, we shall falsely trigger the alarm to see how quickly this organization does respond. Because unfortunately, if you don't test it, the day you need them is the day they never show up in that place. So your ability to detect something and how fast you react will determine how much your security is. Know thy organization. Part of the frontline work I do is rapid response. In case there's an alarm, in case there's an emergency somewhere, someone reaches out to me and I quickly respond to it, dictator-related responses. And majority of the time when I ask organizations, a person would say, hey, our website was crashed, or our website is off. I immediately ask them, okay, who has access to your website? And the usual answer I get from the director of the organization is, I don't know. Let me also find out who has access to the website. And remember, this is an emergency, so they're saying, give us rapid response. I say, okay, let me know. Usually they get back to me after 2 days, like, oh, by the way, we found out it was a consultant that had access to the website, now it is down, so Ronald, can you put it back up? I ask the next question, that did you have a backup of your website where we can start from? And the answer is usually, no, we don't, but we think the service provider has a copy of it. And I ask, can you inquire from the service provider? When they ask service provider, no, we gave you the website, so it's really up to you to do what? To back it up. They're like, okay, now Ronald, we're stuck, what do we do? Can you somehow, somewhere put back our website? And I say, no, unfortunately, I forgot my magic wand at home, so I can't just wield it, and information comes up. So it's very, very key for you as an organization to know what your critical assets are, because that determines how much you can invest in it, where they are, why are they considered critical assets? Remember earlier on I said, it doesn't make sense for an organization to say we are protecting everything. You must consider what are the most critical assets to secure, and then you also decide how much to invest in. And I'll put a small caveat. Many civil society organizations are looking for free digital security protective measures. And I'll be honest with you and tell you that if it's a free digital security protection measure, it probably won't give you enough security that you need. Except, another caveat, except if your processes are so robust that they're integrating multiple avenues of your security. And towards the end, I will share with you what I consider to be a secure organization. So what to be concerned about mainly? The number one thing I have found, or the number one way in which I have found that organizations keep getting compromised, and earlier on when Doctor was presenting in the morning, he did mention phishing attacks. He then demonstrated for a phishing attack. So as soon as I saw the demonstration, I'm like, hey, let me pull that out of my what I was going to show you. It didn't make a lot of sense to show you something that you've already seen. But I just highlighting to you that almost on a daily, when I am reading, because I'm part of several threads which are reporting about vulnerabilities and breaches, data breaches and everything that's happening, phishing is the main means through which most systems are compromised. And simple social engineering. People fall victims of so much information. An example is, and not criticizing anyone by this, but for instance, if I wanted to find out so much information about people in this room, all I have to do is simply go to the Hoover platform, and I'll probably collect a whole trove of information. And once I get that information, then I'm going to start my data mining, my simple reconnaissance. Like probably some of you are wondering, okay, so the presenter is Ronald K. Who the heck is Ronald K? Why aren't you putting all your 8 names? As you know, in Africa, they give you your name, your father's name, your grandfather's name, your uncle's, niece's name, something like that. So I could put my entire dictionary there, and you could find me. But that does not make a lot of sense. You are exposing, you're exposing yourself, and the hope is that everyone in the space is someone you can trust. Organizations do this so much. I have found attending multiple conferences, whenever I go to a conference, organizations have a tendency of having attendance lists. So you're all writing your names, you're putting your email address, you're putting your phone number. And then you walk away, you comfortably go and sit down. Another person comes, they write, then another person comes, they are maybe on WhatsApp. Okay, you assume they're on WhatsApp, but maybe they could be taking a photo of the paper. And that means that you're already exposing details about your organization. If I'm performing a reconnaissance, then it makes it easier for me to get almost all that information. Having what I would call legacy or worn-out devices in production. If you turn on your laptop and you have to wait about 10 minutes for it to start, it may be about time for you to decommission it, because that means that it probably won't be running the most recent operating system. And if it is, then it probably may be having more openings than you can actually imagine. So it's incredibly important for organizations to patch up, to get some new devices. I should mention to you that security is expensive. And in a short while, I'm going to play for you a very small clip, which will perhaps give you a bit more information. Compliance issues. Africa is quickly creating multiple cyber-related laws. Unfortunately, not many organizations in this space are bothering to actually figure out what exactly does the law say. And what people are not realizing that the fact that so many laws are coming up, one of the issues, it may not be happening now, but one of the issues that will quickly come up as we keep moving will be compliance issues, compliance-related issues. You're collecting a lot of data, so this would mean that once your country has a data protection law, similar to the GDPR, which they probably have no idea what it is. GDPR, those general data protection regulations, which were made by the EU, so African governments are simply getting it, bring it in Africa, and saying, start using it. It will literally mean that you, as an organization that collects any information concerning people, will need to get written consent from those individuals to store their information. But at the same time, you have to protect all that. Well, it's going to become a very big legal nightmare, so I don't look forward to that, and I'm glad there are quite a number of organizations in this space working on policy, so maybe they will simplify it for the rest of Africa along the way. Simple action plan. Yes, my presentation is super simple. Start with the self-assessment. If you don't know that you are if you don't know if you are in trouble or not, then you're probably already in trouble. I am a grad student with Science University, and I'm actually taking on a grad course in information security engineering. Sorry, all those many words that they put there just to make it seem like you are going to break your brain while we're studying. But one of the things that we discuss, because among the things that we do is get into real world situations, figure out what's happening in the data. We found that almost all organizations are compromised, but they just have no idea that they are compromised. It's just that they have not yet been exploited, and because they haven't been exploited, suddenly that literally changes everything, or it changes a whole ball game of how they do with things. So get a self-assessment. You could get a professional assessment as well. Yesterday, if you managed to attend the session, I think in the evening, from Resilience Technology, they are doing that. They're doing the assessment. So that could, for instance, that could be one opening for you to be able to reach out to them and say, hey, I need to get assessed and figure out what's actually happening in there. You could reach out frontline. If I'm not overly overtaken or busy, I can help. If I am, then maybe not. You could also reach out quickly. You know, they are, what do you call it? A bit of desks outside, the digital clinic desks happening outside for a quick assessment, a bit of a self-assessment for you to figure out where you are. And why am I pushing you to these assessments? It's good for you to get a professional to look at you and to look into your system and say, hey, we need to do this or we need to do that along the way. And if you don't get assessed, then chances are, imagine you went to a doctor, and as soon as you get to the doctor says, you know what, we need to put a drip on you because I think you're very sick, without the doctor ever having done any assessment. Unfortunately, more times than not, I get calls from organizations saying, hey, Ronald, we're in trouble. Can you come and secure us? And I'm thinking, okay, what exactly is happening within your organization? Do you have any assessment for me to start with? They're like, no. We don't understand the things of digital security. Just come and secure us. End of story. And I usually don't respond to those emails afterwards because I'm thinking, okay, they are not serious about what they're doing and they don't really know. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But along the way, of course, that creates a bit of a roadmap. Create a security plan. There are many tools for you to create security plans, and I'm going to show you a few of them shortly. And then, of course, identifying what I call quick wins. Quick wins, things you can do yourself and you're happy. A mistake many people make, many organizations make the moment they say we need to secure our digital environment is they want to do everything at that very same time. And I've found that that is impractical. Even the most secure of organizations don't do everything at the same time. One day, if you get a chance, talk to the bank, their chief technology person, and they'll tell you how they implement things along the way. So I wanted to share with you a short video, and let me try and bring this on board. I will show you a different screen. One moment. Sorry, bear with me just for 2 minutes. Oh, meanwhile, do you have any questions in the meantime while I'm looking for my video? Any questions? Feel free.
Any questions for Mr. Ronald? Questions, contributions, statements?
Okay, so let me just play for you this video. I don't know how would the sound go on. Tech team, do I need to do any magic for the sound to happen, or I simply play it? I simply play, it should work? Okay, okay, good. So bear with me, it's just a simple 7-minute video, and let's enjoy part of it. Let's see if I can do maximum screen. Yes, I can, and I will press play now. Okay. Nope, just a moment. The sound is only on my system. What do I need to do? Tech team? Moment. I try again, Mr. Technology. Okay, the sound only seems to be on my laptop. Well, let me put the link and then, okay? I could put the link and you could play it on your system, though mine has already buffered. Okay, should we try again? Okay. Still on my sound only. Sorry. Still no sound. Oh, wait. Okay, let me send you the link. Just a moment. Yeah. Any questions in the meantime? And I will send to the chat. People bear with me. I'm not a big user of, which technology are we using here? Yes, Google Meet. I was being asked to generate a link, and I said, unfortunately, I don't seem to have a YouTube account, so, well, that's Ronald. And you probably know why, if we have a side talk. So they should play the link in a short while, and yeah.
Yeah, go talk.
Yes. It seems to have played on. I've sent the link.
But the link is there. I think maybe he has not received it.
Okay. Okay. In the meantime, while we try to sort out the technology bit of it, I will maybe cast to you my last engineer's part. Oh, I can't actually as yet. Still failing?
Let me just look at the video. I'll see
Okay.
what type of
Yeah.
video it is. So. Oh, I didn't bring my phone. So, puzzle, to see.
No worries. One of the things I like so much about anytime I have some of these events is how the time you need the internet to work the most is when it fails. The whole time you can be enjoying, can even be streaming, watching different movies, and then suddenly the internet fails you at the very time you need, and you wonder, is it conniving with you? Please, by all means. Okay.
Well, today was bad for the overall market. It was truly terrible for the cybersecurity cohort.
The whole group was eviscerated thanks to the pin action from a small cybersecurity outfit called Tenable that reported a generally decent quarter, except that it lowered their full-year billings forecast, sparking fears of a slowdown in the industry. But is this a cybersecurity problem or just a Tenable problem? We know that companies are cutting their budgets everywhere, including tech spending, but does that really include cybersecurity? Are companies really holding back? Can they afford to? I'm not sure, but I know who to ask. Kramer Fay at Palo Alto Networks, the cybersecurity chief, which is also presenting at the annual RSA conference in San Francisco this week. This is a key investment club name. So let's take a closer look with Nikesh Arora, the chairman and CEO of Palo Alto Networks, to find out more about what's happening in this industry. Mr. Arora, welcome back to Mad Money.
Thank you for having me, Jim.
Okay, so Nikesh, we're starting to hear from very smaller companies that there are industries, whole verticals, financial services, banking, technology, telecom, that are either slowing down their cybersecurity or saying, look, we've got to figure out what to do before we start spending. And yet, at the same time, I've got a document from the president saying you better start doing this stuff now. And all I ever hear about it, the only area of the entire economy where spending might be going up is what you do. I'm wondering whether I'm listening to a company that is losing business, and now I'm talking to a guy who's gaining business.
Well, Jim, first of all, thank you for having me. As you know, I'm here at RSA today. There's a lot of excitement and buzz out on the floor. Every RSA ends up with some sort of a theme. And the theme, I've been walking around listening to people, they're all excited about AI. They think the moment of AI has already arrived. We've been talking in the past, you and I, about how there's a huge debt in cybersecurity that needs to be paid. And the way that debt gets paid is through more automation and more AI. I listened to the national NSA director yesterday here who talked about how the threats are continuing to rise, more zero-day attacks, more use of AI across new threat vectors. So I don't think the bad actors are taking a recession break.
No.
Bad actors continue to drive more and more activity. We're seeing nation-state activity. So on the adversary side, the activity is not declining. The introduction of AI, which has both a positive and a negative side to it. You're going to see people use AI to start creating new malware and start experimenting with ChatGPT. So I don't think we can let our guard down. I don't think this is the time to pull back and say, okay, I'm going to take a break. And when the world is looking like a better, happier, much more economically sort of bountiful place, we'll go back and start protecting ourselves again.
Well, are you seeing these longer lead times, hesitation, maybe companies saying, you know what, I can hold back?
Well, Jim, we've talked about this. The economic climate through the first 2 quarters, which you and I have talked about, has been pretty consistent, where customers are looking at what's happening to them and paying attention to see do they need to do belt tightening, so they're more cautious. We've talked about the revenge of the CFO. They're scrutinizing deals. They're taking their time, and that trend was here to stay as long as we keep going through this economically uncertain environment. But I don't think they're being silly by saying we're not going to spend money in protecting ourselves.
But at the same time, I've seen your numbers grow and grow and grow. So if that's the environment, you seem to be triumphing over the environment. I don't want to be concerned as a shareholder that it's just been hard and you're winning.
Well, Jim, we talked about how in the moments of uncertainty, what's going to happen is you are seeing small, medium-sized businesses think about how they attribute their spending. You've seen in the past quarters, we've talked about how customers want more certainty, more trustworthy names, more steady partners that are going to be evergreen, that are going to be around for a while. And that's where you see that they continue to concentrate, and that's what's been the trend first 2 quarters of this year for us.
Do you think artificial intelligence could be something that could make the industry reaccelerate no matter what the economic climate?
Jim, I was having this conversation with our internal SOC team, and they shared some numbers that just had me flabbergasted. We ingest 56 terabytes a day at Palo Alto, just for our own SOC. We get 330 million unfiltered alerts, which we hone down to 4,000 alerts. All this stuff cannot be done by humans. We have 4 SOC analysts who 10, who now mediate across these 4,000 alerts a month. We see 5 billion new attacks every day across our entire customer base. 5 billion. You cannot do that humanly. You have to do that through AI. You have to do that through automation. We find 275,000 new attacks every day. So this is a compute problem. This is an automation problem. I think AI is going to come to the rescue. We all get excited about talking about ChatGPT on the conversational side. And it's wonderful to write a ballad to my wife or your wife. You should write that one. And it's wonderful when you can get creative because there are many right answers. In our case, there's only one right answer. You have to find that attack. You have to find that threat. And you have to identify it accurately. So the role of AI in enterprise is going to be amazing, is amazing already. I think you're going to see more and more of it. And it requires more perfection than what you see in the potentially hallucinatory ChatGPT sometimes. But there are models out there that allow us to apply AI to security as much as there are for the consumer world.
Well, how can smaller companies in your industry compete with you, given what you just described?
Like, Jim, this is a scale problem. As you, I'm sure, talk about how is conversational AI, how is generative AI going to be the playground for the very large companies who have the wherewithal and the resources to go deploy it at scale and provide the amount of compute that's needed. I think the same thing happens in the enterprise world. In the enterprise world, we have to use similar models, similar amount of investment to make sure that we can find the right answer. And most importantly, you have to have lots of data. If you don't have data, if you're not a data-oriented security company, you're a UI company, or you're analyzing somebody else's data, this is going to be a challenge.
Now, how much does it matter what the White House said? Because I'm looking at a March document where they're saying that we will place responsibility on those within our digital ecosystem that are best positioned to reduce risk and shift the consequences of poor cybersecurity away from the most vulnerable. I mean, to me, that just says, listen, the government is going to say to companies, if you're part of an important systemic risk in our country, you better spend the money. We're not waiting for whether you have it. You just better go do it.
Look, Jim, I've said this to you before. We have audit committees that are supposed to take responsibility for the financial wherewithal of a company. Soon you're going to have security committees whose job it is to make sure that the companies are secure. Because most of our companies are turning into power digital companies. They have customer data, they have transaction data, they have data about our faces, they have data about our locations. There's a lot of personal data that's out there in the systems of many companies. Even your e-commerce vendor has your data. Obviously, your social media companies have data. That data has to be held responsibly, because if you don't hold that data responsibly, there is a risk that it gets hacked and bad things can happen. So the government is trying to make sure that everybody who has consumer data has a responsibility to keep it safely. And they're making sure you understand your responsibility, because it is no longer acceptable that I did not upgrade my infrastructure or the dog ate my homework. You have to be accountable, you have to be responsible, and that's what they're reminding us this is our responsibility, which bodes well for, I guess, companies in our sector, and also means that a lot of companies have to step up and pay attention to whether they have secure infrastructure or not.
Well, to me, it's one of the best secular growth themes out there. Let me just ask you, because you know security better than anyone, should we be worried about TikTok? Our kids are all on TikTok.
Look, Jim, I think it's very important that many countries around the world have shown us that our data should be held securely within our geographies. And a lot of companies have implemented that strategy because, as you can see, if there's data about everything that we do, like today, AI can recognize your face, AI can fake your voice, AI can make a video with you and me chatting. Very soon, this video will be made by AI. You and I won't have to actually do this. You might just even write the script. So, if all that stuff's going to happen, you got to be very careful about all the data that's out there. And to the extent that you can make sure that data is protected, that's important. That's incumbent upon every one of us to make sure that happens and that stays the case.
I like that. I like that, and that's what I'm thinking, too. That's Nikesh Arora, Palo Alto Network's chairman and CEO. Mad Money's back after the break. Thank you, Nikesh.
Okay, thank
you, Jim.
All right. Okay, perfect. So why did I show you that? Just to show you that the conversation about organization security is actually much bigger than what we think it is currently. So just for those of you who don't know Palo Alto, they are one of the leading cyber security companies in the world, supporting multiple organizations along the way. Okay, I have about 10 minutes left, or 5, give or take, depending how much they're giving me. But are there any questions? Yes, questions.
Any questions for Mr. Ronald?
Okay. Yeah, I know. The lunchtime shift is like that. Good. All right. Thanks, everyone. We are going to have a small demo, I think, which is going to follow this, but I'll hand over to you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ronald. A round of applause for Mr. Ronald, please. Our next
No, I was just saying that in case anyone needs some additional assessment, there's a Dicto Security Clinic outside. Feel free to interact with the ladies and gentlemen outside. Okay.
Please visit the booth, because if you have any devices that you want to check for spyware, they can do that for you. There's also free VPN available, so you can please pass by the booth and then make sure all your devices are safe to handle. Our next session will be happening in the next 10 minutes, so if you want to take a break, that is fine. Oh, please, the booth is to your right if you exit. If you're facing the entrance, it's to your left. Our next session is recognizing and responding to cyber threats, a hands-on threat simulation. And just so we are made aware, please, there will be a screening for a movie later in the evening around 6:45. So please do not go. Please stay behind, enjoy the movie. As Ghanaians we say, collect your eyes, which means enjoy yourself. So please do not leave.
using, and then I'll go into the demo and wrap it up with a malware detection exercise. So my colleague here, Adeboro, is going to hand over a sheet for you to work with, and that's what we'll be starting with now. If you don't have one, you can just signal and she'll give it to you. Please, can I have a microphone? I don't want to use this.
Hello.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So this is going to be an extension of what we did yesterday. If you were in this session and you're here today, thank you for coming back. I appreciate that. I know I kind of said I was expecting you, but I didn't expect that you return. So thank you. This is an extension of what we did yesterday and also an extension of Ronald's presentation that was just wrapped up. It's just going to be a bit more technical, and I'm going to focus more on spyware. So spyware, you may ask, in the course of the presentations that have been made yesterday, today, and even this afternoon, a lot of people have spoken about different kinds of malware. And I decided to focus on spyware because we're talking about civil society, we're talking about journalists, we're talking about human rights activists. And when it comes to digital security and the operations of cyber criminals, there's always a motive. And when the target is people that work in the civil space, journalists and human rights defenders, it's always for a reason. And most of the time, it is not financial gain. Most of the time, it's not because they feel like playing around. Most of the time, there's always a malicious reason behind it, and it's mostly to see what they are up to. So as a journalist, one of the risks that I'm most susceptible to is surveillance and people spying on me. This is why I decided to focus on spyware. Now, before we get into the session properly, do we all have our assessment sheets with us? Okay, so let's go to page 1. Let's go to page 1. Yesterday at our session, when we made the presentation on the RT10 project, we're talking about how digital security should not be far-fetched for any organization, it should not be expensive, and it shouldn't be a burden for anyone. It means that everybody has a role to play in digital security. Now, I want you to take a look at the sheet that has been given to you. Please don't write until I ask you to. I hope we all have a pen to carry out this assessment. Now, what we're going to do here is just a mini assessment. Okay. Yes, it's just a mini assessment of your digital security and the security of your organization. This will just assist you in identifying possible threats that you are prone to as an individual and as a part of an organization. Please feel free to throw away the sheet, destroy it, or do whatever you want to do with it after now. And don't write your name or the name of your organization for, of course, security reasons. If you work in the same organization, you can discuss together and write accordingly. Now, we've heard a lot of things about types of attacks. We've heard about phishing, spear phishing. We've heard of website attacks, and we've heard of these different things. Now, it's time for us to do a little self-assessment. And we'll start with number 1. Look at where you work. Look at the kind of work you do. Look at what you work with. What do you want to protect? If you were to be in charge of security, what do you want to protect within your organization? Now, if I own a food business and I have a restaurant, what I would most likely want to protect, first of all, if I have a physical premises, of course, my surroundings. Secondly, if I have, say, my recipes that are stored somewhere, I want to protect those. If I have money that is there, I want to keep those things protected. Now, think of the kind of work you do within your organization. What do you want to protect? Please write it down. I'll be moving on to the next question. Okay. So what do you want to protect? I can see some people are still writing. Can we go to question 2, please? If you already say aye. Okay, so question 2. What is important to me as an individual? Not as a worker now, as an individual, what is important to you, especially when it pertains to work? Do you use your smartphone for work, your PC, your emails, or research data? What is important to you? Please write it down. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Let me wait for some people to finish. Okay, number 3. Oh, no, sorry. The second question. Now, who do I want to protect it from? Sorry? Okay. Who do you want to protect it from? An example can be a rival organization, government organization. Think about what would motivate these adversaries, what are their capabilities. So who do I want to protect it from? If I want to protect it from the government, what is the motivation of the government if they are coming after me? Are they after my data? Are they after my research work? Do they want to see the evidence I have against them? Why are they coming after me? And then secondly, what are their capabilities? How far can they go? What exactly can they do to me? Please write that down. That is about that question. Okay, moving on to 3. What impact does this have if the above-mentioned assets are compromised? Now, if you remember in question 1, we did some assets identification, and I said, what do you want to protect and what is important to you? Now, if these assets you have mentioned are being compromised, what impact does it have on you? What impact does it have on you, on your business? Is your business going to die completely? Are you going to lose access to your data? Will it impact your reputation? Think about all those things. What impact does it have on you? And write it down. Don't forget to write it down. Okay. Number 4, how likely is it that this would happen? So you can apply this to multiple scenarios in your head or generally, and the assets identified. How likely is it that there can be a breach? How likely is it that anyone could attack me or my organization? Unlikely, very likely. Just be honest with yourself. Nobody is marking it. So we move to the second to the last question, which is question 5. What kind of measures can I put in place to prevent the identified incidents in 3 and 4 above from happening? From what you know, from what you have heard about, from what you have learned, what kind of measures can you put in place to prevent these from happening? So you can just say, I can create a security policy for my organization. I can ensure that my staff, Do not use their personal devices for work. Whatever comes to mind, whatever you've learned about, just ensure you update it. So our final question is, what do I need to go back to implement based on the assessments I just conducted? So think about all these questions you've answered. What do you think is lacking? What do you think you need to go back and work on within your organization? And write it down and keep it to yourself for further improvements. Okay. So now moving on, I would like to share a live cyber threat map with you. Okay. So if you can see my screen, you can see the checkpoints live cyber threat map. You can see instances of where attacks are happening, the speed at which they're happening, and what's happening up there. So a lot of attacks are going on in the United States, in Germany, in Russia. I don't know, I can see Africa. That's rare. But yeah, we can see Zimbabwe, we can see a number of countries there. If I look at the details here, you can see the top targeted countries, which are Mongolia, Georgia, Nepal, and Angola. And that is just for this period. I mean, you can check it out later, and it will be showing different countries altogether. I'm sharing this because I want to emphasize on the fact that a lot of times there is negligence when it comes to addressing cyber threats, especially in this part of the world, especially in Africa, because we believe that we are hardly a target. I mean, what is on the news and what is going around is mostly about threats pertaining major countries like Russia, Iran, and all these other people that are always on the internet. And we ignore the fact that, you know, even if it hasn't happened to us before, it is slowly creeping. Let me go back to my presentation. I have two instances where we have indeed had, okay, it's not showing. Okay, so I have two instances where we have indeed had cases of spyware in Africa. And the first one, as portrayed here, is Morocco, Rwanda, and Togo, how they were able to identify some people's phones being infected with spyware, Pegasus in particular. And it just shows that Africa has also been implicated in this global scandal. I know Pegasus is one of the most popular spyware used in the world, but we've not heard of instances of it being in this part of the world. A lot of times we hear about it being used by major countries to spy on each other and to spy on their dissidents as well. The second is in Togo, which was the most recent one, where RSF was able to identify spyware on phones of two Togolese journalists. They were arrested by the government for defamation, I think. Yes, they were arrested by the government, and then RSF was able to go through their phones and perform an assessment, and they were able to find cases of Pegasus spyware being on the phone. It means that the government had already used it to infect their phones and try to get information on what they had been working on, which is a breach of privacy. And originally, some of these governments supposedly purchased these tools and this spyware to the claim that they are using it for national security. In 2020, the Nigerian government also acquired a spyware, and they said it was for the defense agencies, the intelligence agency, to use it to protect the people for surveillance and cases like that. And I've heard of a government in the south, in the southeast, that used the same spyware to spy on their opponents during the election period. Now, at the end of the day, this just shows how simple it is for the government and other actors to creep in on us without us knowing. And one interesting thing about Pegasus itself is it has grown so much and evolved to the point that it is now invisible. So when you're talking about malware, you're saying, how do you know a malware is on my computer? You won't even know it's there. And when we talk about hacking generally, there are 5 phases of hacking. We have reconnaissance, which is information gathering. We have enumeration. After reconnaissance, after you're able to gather your information, we have scanning. You go through the information that you've gotten, then you gain access to the computer when you have found a loop or a vulnerability, and then you maintain your access, which is persistent, and at the end of the day, when you're done doing what you want to do, you clear your tracks. These are the 5 stages of hacking. Now, in the cases of spyware, it comes into your computer or your mobile device, and you are not aware that it is there. So these things have grown in such areas that you click on a link, it comes into your phone, it starts moving in your phone. There's no sign. Nothing is telling you that, oh, there's no viral bug, your phone is not slowing down. There's no indicators that there's anything happening behind the scenes. So at the end of the day, we need sophisticated to check these occurrences, especially on our devices. Now, in my next slide, I want to talk about 3 prominent spyware samples that we have identified and are generally known around the world. The first is Pegasus, like I said, the king of them all. Pegasus is sophisticated, and it targets iOS and Android mobile devices generally. Its deployment is usually through zero-click exploits or stealthy infiltration. Stealthy infiltration meaning it's very, like I said, it's invisible. You wouldn't know, and you don't need access. For some malware, you need to be able to click on something. You need to be able to download something and interact with the application before it is installed on your computer. But for Pegasus, anybody can inject you with it without you knowing about it. LightSpy is another one. It is Android focused, so it's mainly for Android devices, and it is known for social engineering. So the deployment is usually spread through malicious links and applications. These ones are easier to identify because, I mean, when you download apps from unknown sources or apps that are crack applications or basically things you shouldn't be doing, it's easy for them to come into your computer or your mobile device. And then their unique features is it targets Android devices, and it also employs social engineering tactics. You know, click a link, go to this place before you have to access it. Then we have Predator. Predator is the last one, and is mostly used for corporate espionage. It's a corporate espionage focused spyware. So it's mostly used by sophisticated members of gangs or governments or people with plenty resources that have a specific target and want to attain something in particular. So what they do is they use it to target corporate organizations, especially big ones, mostly to spy on what they are doing, to get information that they would use later, probably to infiltrate them further. And the unique features is it is able to evade detection. So forget that you have an antivirus or a firewall, it is able to evade this detection, and it focuses on corporate targets. Like I said, their focus is corporate entities. Okay. Oh, no, sorry. Before this. So now I'm going to go into my demo. And for my demo, I will be using a sample. Okay, let me just power on my device. Start. So for my demo, I have an Android device which is emulated, and I will be using a virtual environment, a virtual machine, to test the device. Because of time, I have already infected the device. I have infected it with 2 major spyware samples, the Pegasus spyware and the LightSpy. So I have infected the device already, and I'll be using the mobile verification toolkit. Now, what is MVT? So have you heard of MVT before? I mean, besides, I know Ronald should know about MVT. But yeah, the Mobile Verification Toolkit is a tool developed by Amnesty International Security Lab. It was released in July 2021, and it was made specially because of Pegasus intervention. So because of the known cases of Pegasus and its movement and how people were using it to spy on journalists and human rights activists, Amnesty International Security Research Team came up with this idea, and they're like, oh, let's develop a tool to be able to test Android and iOS devices for these things. So how it works is that it does a forensic research on your device. It matches the applications on your device to known indicators of compromise. So indicators of compromise are just the behaviors, the, what word will I use? But basically the behaviors on your phone or the data that on your phone that matches or leads or can be linked to a malware. So it indicates that, okay, there has been compromise here. It has an irregular behavior. That is what MVT does. Now, I'm going to be using MVT on my virtual machine to test this device that I have created, so you can see how it works and you can see some details of some of the information that it gets from it and how dangerous it is. So let me go to let me share the screen where my spyware is. Okay. Stop presenting. Present something else. Window. Let me just present my entire screen. Okay. Share. I'm sharing my screen. Why can't I see it? I'm coming. Entire screen. Okay. Please, can you go back to the call? Okay, so this is my Android OS. I have opened it. This is the interface. And yes, this is my Android OS. Turn this off. So this is the interface you can see. Now, this application you can see is one of the spywares I have on the phone. It is a Chinese safety application. I downloaded it on the mobile device, and I downloaded another one, which is carrying Pegasus spyware. Now, that one does not appear on your settings or on your applications. It doesn't appear as an application. It is just embedded into your device functions. Now, if you take a look at this one, back to my presentation. Okay, so this application that you're looking at, by the time I downloaded it, I did a search for what this Chinese word means, and it means happy safety. So it is supposed to be a safety app for Chinese dissidents, but instead, it was being used to spy on them. And now I want us to get into the details of the applications. Let me go back to my Android device. So we'll go to the settings. Network is poor. And then we'll go to applications. Notifications. Oh, back please. Okay, see all 26 apps. What's happening? Okay. Now when you scroll down, so this com.network.android is the second spyware I installed. Like I said, it doesn't have a UI. You cannot see it as an application on the phone, but it is there. If we click on it, and we look at the permissions it has access to, you can see that, oh, this network is slow, but. So you can see that it has access to my calendar, my call logs, my camera, my contacts, my location, my microphone, my phone, my SMS, and my storage, which is very inappropriate. Like, well, let's go back to the safety app. Okay, no. Deny anyway. Okay. Let's go back to our safety app. So this is our Let's Safe app, and we'll click on it, and we'll check the same thing. Anyway, the safety app has access to my calendar, my call logs, it has the same pattern, my contacts, my location, my storage, my phone, my SMS, and my backend service. I think I'm done showing you this. I'm going to go back to my virtual machine and then use the mobile verification toolkit. Before then, I want us to get the IP of this mobile device so we can be able to connect it with, my virtual machine to be able to investigate. Now for that, I'll just use FN plus F1. Okay, so sorry, we have power issues. So while we wait for them to bring back the lights, I don't know why this is happening during my session, but okay.
Kindly apologize for the delay. We are experiencing some technical difficulties, but we are working on it and we will resume shortly. Thank you.
While we wait for the power, does anyone have any questions so far? I guess we can start with that so we can save time. Any questions, observations, comments, contributions? Speak your mind.
Please ask Ms. Nanban questions. Please, she's ready to answer. Any questions, suggestions, observations? Okay, we have one.
Yeah, please, I want to find out if the MVT toolkit is something free available for us to use.
Yes, MVT is an open
app
source.
or website to go, or how is it like?
Oh, okay. So MVT is an open source software, but it is not recommended for just an individual to use it. We recommend that you have a digital security professional carry out the assessment for you, or someone with knowledge. Because at the end of the day, even if you follow the documentation and the procedures, to be able to translate what it says and the kind of response your report gives to you, you'd need technical knowledge. But it is an open source tool. You can just search for mvt.io, I think. It's an Amnesty International product. Any other questions while we wait for? Okay.
Hello, Nanban.
Hi.
You spoke about the predator. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
You spoke about the predator. It cannot be easily detected. So how do we handle that?
Of how it cannot be easily detected.
It cannot. You said it cannot be easily detected.
Yes, I said it cannot be easily
detected. So how
detected.
do we handle that in case my company has been attacked?
I think for things like this, so there's something we call a zero-day malware. So a zero-day malware is something that does not have a solution, has not been discovered, and it just, when it happens, it happens. Now, when some of these things are discovered, the organization immediately patches things up, upgrades their systems, upgrades their technologies, and then pushes it as updates for you. For things like this, it's back to the people and your processes. What are your practices like? Like I said, for the light spy now, if someone does not necessarily have a certain level of access to you, there's no way they can infiltrate you or inject you with a malware or something like that. So what are your personal practices? It boils down to you. What are you clicking on? What websites are you accessing? What applications are you using? It has to be a part of this thing. But in cases where these things have been discovered, because like I said, as much as security is evolving, even the malicious persons are being updated. So every day, like Pegasus as well keeps pushing out new releases. Let me use Amnesty. As Amnesty security team is doing its research, Pegasus is also finding a way to bypass all these security features that they are being updated with. So things that are unknown, you should be able to assess yourself, what are you doing? Because at the end of the day, when you get infected, it's not like there was anything you could do about it. There was no solution at that point in time. But all these things I'm talking about, there are updates on some tools, some antiviruses, anti-malwares that would definitely curb them and help you get rid of them. Yes, please.
So my question is, we download a lot of apps from Play Store and then when you're about to launch the app, it tells you you should, the app, before the app will be able to work, you should have access to your contacts,
Yes.
location, messages, and then you allow. What's your assertion on that? That's my first question.
The question is, what is the application? What are you using it for? Always check it. If you're downloading a calculator and it's requesting for your camera access, you ask yourself why. Is it measuring the width of your face? So what are you downloading? For example, like I said, the calculator. Why will a calculator be asking for recording access on my phone or access to my files? So it's always, like I said, it boils down to you as a person. I always say that these platforms we use, Facebook, Instagram, they will always update their policies, they'll always update their applications, they'll add multi-factor authentication, tomorrow there'll be security keys, but they cannot come and hold your hand and force you to turn it on. They cannot come and force you to change your password. So it boils down to you and your organizational practices.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. My name is Naru. I'm Africa Policy Manager at Access Now. I wanted to ask how spyware victims could reach resilience. I'm sorry, I apologize. I wasn't here at the beginning, so I may have missed that. I wanted to ask if you provide threat resolution services, and if yes, what channels will people typically reach out to you if they find that they have been infected?
Okay, yes, we do. We do everything around digital security for civil society organizations. You can reach out to us via our website. Our email is there on the website. Is that all? Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Nanban. That was a good presentation. My name is Ida, and my question is, when it comes to tools and antiviruses that you can use to malware and spyware and all of that, how are you sure that those antiviruses or tools are not actually being the malicious software on your devices? How do you check? How do you make sure that you are doing the right thing?
So just like with everything we do, like in our day-to-day operations, we know who we trust. You use your bank now. You use your bank because you trust them. You leave your money there because you trust them. Anybody can come out tomorrow and say, I'm opening a bank for women and I think you should. If you haven't done your assessment, if you don't have evidence, if you don't know that you can trust them, you wouldn't put your heart there. You wouldn't put your money. They say your money is where your heart is. You wouldn't put your money there. When you want to hire a lawyer, when you want to go to the hospital, you don't just go anywhere. You go somewhere you trust. You go somewhere that you know is good for you. So it's the same with these tools, these services, and these organizations. Like I was talking about the MVT. Now there can be any tool out there trying to help you stay safe online. But because it is from Amnesty, and we know what the kind of work that Amnesty International does, we know that, okay, it is quality work and it is for the safety of the people. So where are you downloading your antivirus from? Who are the manufacturers? These are questions you should ask yourself. And in many cases, there's free resources. Before you jump on that free anti-malware or antivirus, always ask yourself, do your research, what are the reviews? Who are the people that manufactured it? And how efficient is it? I think that's my response to that. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. So I think our time has been fast spent, and I don't know if we're still going to be able to do this assessment. So I'll probably just explain how is it supposed to work. Maybe you can have a pictorial image of me typing in the commands and running them. I don't know if you understand it, but let me just explain it. So what I was about to do was get the IP address of my Android device, then use a tool called Android Debug Bridge to connect my Android device to my virtual machine, which is the computer I'll be using to test it. You have a question? Okay. So afterward, I am supposed to now launch the MVT, which is the Mobile Verification Toolkit. After launching it, the first thing I was going to do was to download all the applications. I already have access to the Android device. So the first thing I was going to do was download all the applications on the Android device. So I've gotten all the application information. From there, I use a command to pass through all the applications. So it is checking all the applications against all the IOCs that MVT has stored in it. So MVT has a series, or it has a collection of on Pegasus, it has information on Lightspy, it has information on other forms of malware out there. Now, what I was going to do was do a check against what MVT has to see if MVT can recognize anything in my device. After doing that, I was also going to use a tool called Android QF. Now, Android QF is also a tool used to pass through your Android device and the applications there to check for any instances of malware. Android QF was going to also give me a result of what were the unknown permissions that were on the phone, what were some things that they could flag. I know an example of something I found was, oh, your phone has not been updated for 6 months, and a few other things that we're going to see. And then the last report. So at the end of the day, because there's a lot of jargons going on, there's a lot of code and there's a lot of output, I was going to generate a bug report that you could look at later and then go through it, look at the details, look at the files there, how dangerous are they. At the end of the day, the report will show you the name of the application, the access that it has on your phone, what you can do on your phone. It shows things like, oh, com.android is able to intercept your calls. Com.android is able to listen to your conversation, to download your messages, to access your internal files. So at the end of the day, that is what we're supposed to do, but because of the technical issues, we're unable to do that. So the next thing we're going to do before I leave is the second assessment, the malware detection challenge. If you still have your paper with you, please bring out your pens so we can get it done. Lastly. So this malware detection challenge is very easy. As you can see, the first task is to identify the indicators of compromise. So imagine you're being suspicious about strange events that are happening on your computer or strange behavior. Look at the clues below and tick any signs that you find suspicious. If you don't have a paper, please raise your hand so that my colleague can give it to you. Thank you. Now, the first thing there is your computer is suddenly running very slowly. You receive strange emails from unknown senders with attachments, and pop-up messages appear claiming your computer has a virus and offering to fix it. You can tick on all three, you can tick on two, you can tick on any one you want to address personally. Identify the indicators of compromise. So these are indicators of compromise on a physical device, of course. I was using a virtual device. So the second task, what is the story? So now that you have found some clues, you have found out that your computer is running slowly and that's what's happening on your device, you're going to match the clue to a possible explanation. First of all, for the low computer performance, does this mean that your computer is tired and needs a break, or does it mean that your computer may have a virus or malware slowing down? Remember, this is your narrative, so you can tick anything you want. So, do you think it is because your friends are sending you surprise gifts or because someone is trying to trick you to open a malware? So you're seeing strange emails and you're seeing attachments in them. What do you think the issue is? And then the last one is pop-up messages about virus. Now you have a pop-up message saying, oh, your computer has been infected with a virus. Click on this link so we can help you fix it. Click on this link so we can help you secure your computer. Do you think your computer is just being helpful? It may be your antivirus, or it may be scammers still trying to scare you into downloading a malware. Because I mean, they would always go a long way. So like I said, this is a self-assessment. Keep it to yourself, tear it, keep. I know that a lot of people have spoken about how to stay safe online, personally, and even within your organization. So for your device security, we recommend that you use password managers, and for storing your passwords, some of the examples we added here are KeePass, LastPass, and Dashlane. We also have Bitdefender and a few more online. Secondly, if you want to use a free antivirus, we recommend Avira, AVG, Avast, Inbuilt, and Windows Defender. For those of us that want to use a free antivirus, these are trusted antivirus services that you can use. Now, for your email and social media security, of course, ensure that
Zanata, and then Miss Sandra Acheng. Please, hello. We have free VPNs. It's an initiative by Paradigm. So please head to the Digital Security Workshop booth and please go grab a free VPN installed. And you can also check for any spywares on any devices that you have available.
right, good evening. We're at time, so we'll start. This was advertised as a 90-minute session with leaders, but we've got 70 minutes. But that's fine. We'll make do with what we have. I'll introduce my colleagues in a minute, but just to give a sense of how we plan to do this. We're going to have a sort of dialogue, trialogue. We're going to have a conversation, amongst ourselves, a few questions that I have for both of them, and also if they have some questions for me. And the focus of this is basically the topic of leadership, but not leadership in theory. This is leadership in practice. So anything ranging from why on earth are you leading the organization you're leading to, how do you do it when someone in your organization, does something you're not happy about? I mean, we'll discuss, any of those topics. And then halfway into the conversation, we'll come to you. And the basic idea is if you have any questions, so we've tagged this an Ask Me Anything session. We'll introduce ourselves, because what I want us to do is not just to mention names and organizations, but also for each of us to tell you, very briefly, how we started doing what we're doing right now as leaders of organizations. And that way, it can set the tone for some of the questions you may have. So I know there are people in the room who also lead their own organizations. I know there are people in the room who plan to lead organizations from there. But I can start, and then I'll go to Raphael. My name is Ben Gasheson. I'm executive director at and the reason why Paradigm Initiative started in 2007 was because when I was in high school, in my third year, a teacher had told me that I could never understand how to use computers, and I wanted to. I started a small project just to prove a point, to let the teacher know that, well, I can use computers and teach other people. But along the line, I realized that I enjoyed doing that, and not just enjoyed doing it. I thought that it was important to now do it for real. And over time, a few things, some of which we'll discuss over the next 30 minutes, led to eventually, a few years after this experience, specifically 16 years after that experience, Paradigm Initiative started. So I'll let Rafa and Sandra introduce themselves. I could easily say he's a co-director with Data Privacy Brazil, and she's executive director at WUGNet, the Women of Uganda Network. But I would like for them to introduce themselves and say one or two things about how did you start as a leader and why, maybe.
Hi, so it's a pleasure to be here again in this room, in this panel. As Benga said, my name is Rafael, and I'm a Brazilian digital rights activist. I'm now turning 37 years old, and I've been an activist in digital rights in the past, I would say 13 years. I don't have a proper reason to start in doing this work because in my opinion, I fell in love with the collective forces in Brazil. I'm very respectful for what came before me, like the work of other activists and the work of the whole community of digital rights, which actually just developed the work that people in the field of democracy and communication rights did in the past, in the 80s. So there's a long tradition of social movements in Brazil in democracy, in overturning the dictatorship that lasted 25 years, and the whole social movement on communication rights, which we felt very inspired by them. So our community, in which we self-entitle ourselves as digital rights activists, did not come out of the blue. And I don't think that I have anything so special about it. I think I'm just playing a small piece in a larger picture in which there are many, many organizations, many, many leaders. And I once read, Benga, that nobody wants to become like a manager or a director of an NGO, but you simply become one because there's no one else to do the job, and you want to do with quality. And that's what I believe as well. I mean, I didn't plan for it. When I was doing law school or studying as a lawyer, I didn't believe like 15 years ago I would be the director of one NGO, but I became one. And my efforts together with my colleagues is to work with quality and respecting all the people involved. So we are in 26 people. It's a medium-sized organization. And it is quite challenging. But I did learn a lot when I was like a researcher or a program officer, just observing who were in those leadership positions before. So I did a lot of observation on what was the role of a leader for many, many years until I started and founded this NGO. So I'm very grateful for everybody that did the work before. And I think this is a truly collective knowledge experience.
Thanks. So one of the reasons why I asked you and also asked Sandra is because of sort of the different experiences. I mean, not just regional. Yes, you're Latin America. She's from Africa. I'm from Africa also. But also the sort of experience. And I'm glad you mentioned that. So, having worked somewhere before and then now, starting something. I know you have the question that I asked earlier generally to answer, but one of the things that I also would love for you to speak to maybe after the first response is also you've been part of a transition where someone starts something and then hands it over and says take care of this baby, and then you've been able to take care of the baby, grow the baby, make the baby well fed, and the baby is becoming growing and all that. We'll talk a bit more about that.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Hi. I like to have people in the room that has energy. So my name is Sandra Acheng, and currently I'm the Executive Director at Women of Uganda Network. WOGNET is a women's rights organization based in Uganda that started way back in May 2000 with the aim of promoting and supporting the use of ICT. I would like to start from where I stopped, that up to now I still don't believe that I'm a leader. It's something that I'd never thought that I would be. And I think there was a time, that was in DRIF last year, when I was having a conversation with the Benga, and it was like, I knew that you would be. And it looks like people really observe us a lot more than we do. And it has been a surprise when I got the role. First of all, I told my big sister, and she was like, are you ready? Okay, you need to change your wardrobe. Those are the things. So those are some of the things that I also really miss. Just to put to context, I joined last year in March 2023, and I was just 29 years old. So don't think that leadership is for the big. And I also have a lot of questions actually for you, Benga, later on. So the beauty is that starting to be a leader is not something that, it's something that we do when we are not recognized, but it becomes different when you're up there, especially when you are a team, you're leading a team maybe of about 20 people, it's different. But leadership starts from you trying to implement projects. How do you work with the team, understanding the team, but also having a lot of understanding about the task and the roles that the team are supposed to do. It so happened that I finished campus in 2017, and when I finished, I started working at Women of Uganda Network as a volunteer. Okay, not working. I started volunteering. But also, I would say that volunteering has been one of the major things that has really impacted a lot of my leadership skills. Kudos to the Wikimedia Foundation team, because I've really learned a lot from them, from volunteering from the Ugandan perspective of the communities, but also volunteering to organize conference. I have huge amount of experience in communication, in scholarship management, because of some of the volunteering roles that I've done, and being open to learn, reaching out to people, but I think I will talk more to that after. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. So I have a question for both of you. And some of it will be contextual. And it's also about, and I know you know, you've told me this before and you mentioned it again, that nobody wants to be a leader. But honestly, if you asked everyone in this room right now, how many of you want to be leaders who are not already leaders? My gut feeling is that your theory may not. Okay, let's do this. Practical. Jimmy and others who are already leading the organizations, you're not qualified to respond. For those who are not leading the organizations at the moment, how many of you would like to be leaders? Did you see what happened? Some hands just sprang up immediately. So it sounds to me many times like when we're in the thick of things as leaders, we often say that we honestly really don't want to do this, but we found ourselves in the midst of it. And it's true, because this is also very individual. But I'm just wondering, for both of you, if you look back now, this is Ask Me Anything, right? If you look back now, at what point did you realize that, and I know you just mentioned that you still don't feel like it, but the interesting question, this is it. At what point did you realize this is not a joke, right? I'm in charge. Was it immediately you were announced as a leader? Was it immediately you decided, you know what, let's co-found this organization? Or was it when there was a challenge in the room and everyone kept looking at you? I'm sure for different people it's different things. But at what point? And the reason I'm asking this question is because for everyone in this room, we all have moments like that. When people call on us as leaders, either as a leader of an organization, as a COO, as a program manager, and I suspect that your experience will have one or two things that we can all learn from. So, all right.
Okay, so for me, it was in 2016 that moment happened. I was working for the Brazilian Institute of Consumer Defense, which is a traditional NGO in Brazil founded in 1987. And I was leading the work on digital rights and telecommunications. And the main telecommunication companies in Brazil, they decided to change the method of payment of the internet, home fixed internet. They wanted to change from regular fee to pay as long as you consume, just like in the mobile. And they did all of the same time. The four biggest companies, which they dominated 90% of the market, they did a movement at the same time in the beginning of 2016. And I was in the position of, all the activists and regulators didn't know how to act. And I started leading a campaign called Internet Livre, which is like freedom on internet or a free internet. And I realized nobody knew exactly what to do, and I had the capacity to develop a strategy to really curb the power of those firms by playing with the rules of the telecommunication regulators and developing a national campaign, which was extremely successful. And in 2 weeks, we were already invited to all the newspapers and television programs in Brazil and everything. And out of the sudden, I realized that I was in the position of like pointing the directions of things that would affect the lives of millions of people in Brazil. And that was the moment I felt the responsibility on my shoulders, because I was in a position that I was leading the campaign. Everybody was asking, what are the next steps? And I was responsible for defining this strategy. And it worked. And this was my first successful campaign. And that was the moment in which everybody knew who was I. I mean, and I became like a public figure in Brazil because of this campaign. And this was really serious. And I think I wouldn't say lucky, but this was a policy issue that was not something that only the left-wing people cared. Also, the majority of the right-wing people cared. So it was truly like a national concern, you know, and this was the moment of responsibility. And that was the moment in which I realized, like, okay, I'm truly a digital rights activist, and what I do matters for the lives of millions of people, so I should be really careful on what I'm doing.
Thanks. That's not surprising. Sandra.
Yes, so what I would say is that what is the time that you really decide, realize that you are a leader, I think is when there are challenges. When everything is going on well, staff are working, everyone is sending in their reports, that you will not, but I feel like the challenges is really what will define you as a leader. Because when challenges come, you need to really have problem-solving skills. One of the aspects that you really, as a leader, should have that is not practical is, first of all, embrace emotional intelligence. Because if you're not emotionally intelligent, first of all, when you're a leader, everyone is looking at you, and there's a lot of judgment, and you being in the state whereby you have your own challenges, but you have to care for your staff first. They are not feeling well, you need to check on them every day. They are not performing, you need to talk to them every day. But the problem is not all the staff will care about you. There will be others that will really be concerned and find out what is this lady like, today she's not, fine. And most times, I think one of the most strongest skill that someone should have as a leader is observation. For me to know someone, I don't need to take 5 minutes. I will know what are your strengths, do I need to be friends with this person or not? And one of my colleagues always is surprised when I ask him that, oh, are you okay? I've been noticing that this has been happening. Is everything okay? Then he will try to dodge. Then he say, but Sandra, how do you notice these things? And then I say, yeah, I pay a lot of attention, like to know how really the team are doing, both not just work, but also being concerned beyond work of how the team are doing. So this year, it was a bit challenging. We had our staff end of year party. It was all juicy. And then as WUGNET, we have an office that is based in Kampala, but we also have regional offices that is based in the Rwenzori part of Uganda called Fort Photo District, and then northern part of Uganda. So there was a staff of ours that was based in the Rwenzori part of Uganda. And, just speaking to someone on a Friday, and then you wake up on the Sunday and the person is gone. So he had an accident, and it was very emotional because, first of all, the team is looking at you. What is the solution first? But also, the team does not expect you to cry as a leader. Yet we are also emotional. So it was really very touching, but also sort of seeing what are the solutions that we can be as a team, building a strong team, having a lot of teamwork, and sort of being together in that moment, ensuring that you have the right policies in place, because you can be sued. That was a weekend, and the court process is still going on. So now that is when you start to really feel that being a leader is when there are challenges in place, and you need to have solutions to solve such challenges. Thank you.
And thank you so much for
What
sharing.
about you then? I'm curious to hear your story.
Okay. When did I realize? I think different times, at different times. One was, oh yeah, I remember this one. One was when, so a few of us as young people were volunteers and were doing this thing. It was initially called Black Pioneers, and later we called it E-Nigeria, and later we called it, I don't remember, and then we called it Paradigm Initiative Nigeria. But we all worked for different people. I worked at Junior Achievement of Nigeria. My colleagues were working elsewhere, and there were 6 of us. And sometime in 2006, it was very clear to us that what we were doing was no longer it should no longer continue as a side hustle, as something we did on the side. Someone had to take responsibility and turn this into a going concern, into an organization. And of course, we all gathered, a few of us were, living together, like 3 of us were living together. We called the others and said, okay, someone has to resign from what they're doing. And what it meant was that, we all had, decent jobs, and Paradigm Initiative Nigeria, the name we came up with, had nothing. It meant whoever resigned would have to be the one to find the resources to run whatever it was. And there was silence in the room, and then I said, okay, I'll resign on February 14. This was, I think, in January. And this, by the way, is one of the reasons I get into trouble. I move when things need to happen. And when I said that, of course, there was no going back. At that moment, I thought that, well, when I say I'll resign on February 14, I looked at Titi thinking she would say, okay, I'll resign on February 15, and the others would say, okay, I'll resign. And then I kept looking at them, and she was silent, he was silent, he stood up to go and get some water, and I'm like, am I the only one? And they were like, you know what, we'll support you. Now, I think that was the moment I knew that I had no choice. I got to the office the next day and I put in my resignation very quickly because I knew, I know myself. I could easily change my mind, but the need was very clear. Nigeria was going through a process at the time, and there was a unique opportunity for an organization to crystallize everything that was happening and build on it. And so, if we didn't start Paradigm Initiative in Nigeria in 2007, someone else would have started it. But we would have missed some opportunities. So it was that moment of who will resign from there. And to be honest, I had $4,000 in savings from consulting. So I thought to myself, this is backup, right? $4,000 is a lot of money. That's what I thought. Until we went to the first place to rent the venue to do the training, and they told us the price. And then we invited someone. This is interesting. We invited someone from, I think, the UK Deputy High Commission. And the moment they saw that we had, in quotes, an international visitor, they increased the price of the venue. And so $4,000 finished very quickly. But I think that was a moment for me, one of the moments for me, yeah. Sandra, you touched on something that I know we don't talk a lot about, and that's leaders, emotions, and while you're caring for others, people also looking out for you. I'll share a few things, and then I'll come back to Raphael, and if you want to add a bit more. The experience you shared in terms of someone on the team, dying, we had a similar experience in 2012. In fact, this was not a member of our team. This was a volunteer who came from the US on holidays and was like, oh, Paradigm Initiative, I'm going to volunteer for you guys again. And I'm going to help you coordinate people traveling between Lagos and the conference venue in Ile-Ife, which is typically about, say, 250 kilometers, and somewhere on the way, the bus had an accident, and I didn't know what had happened. But someone came to me, so I was in front of the room like this. Someone was speaking, I was speaking, and then there was a third. I think there were 4 of us. One of our board members now was also with me on the stage, and someone came to whisper to me. To be honest, I didn't hear what the person said. How do you process when they say Taiwo Bankole and others have been involved in an accident? And I'm like, how? How? I just arrived, others just arrived. How could? And in that moment, I scanned the room. I saw my wife's face, and she had this look on her face like, let's go. And I know that look. That look is, let's go. I whispered to Nick, who was beside me, that I have to leave. And then I whispered to Tope, who was our CEO at the time, and I said, listen, we've had a tragedy. The show continues because we don't know the extent of this. I've been told it's an accident. We don't know if anything happened. And then, but I may not come back. So I left the room. And to be honest, for a moment, I blamed everyone who had a laughter on their face or who was smiling, because I was thinking to myself, why are you guys laughing? There's been an accident. But to be honest, they didn't know. And I think this is important for us as leaders. Many times we get information and we know some things. Even when we've not been told, you can suspect things in advance. I went to, I don't know how you did it. You said, you know, people don't expect you to cry. I cry like a baby. I got to the hospital. I saw my very good friend, Emmanuel. They left him on a stretcher, and because there were other critical cases, I don't know if there's any doctor in the room, so they have this triage thing where they go to the most serious case and they leave others. And this was my friend, not just a volunteer coming to speak. And the next thing was, I noticed people woke me up. I passed out. Not only was I crying, I fainted, like literally. And by the time I came back to myself, it occurred to me that, yes, it's okay to faint and react, but you have decisions to make. You're the leader. You need to decide, do we cancel the program? Do we create more panic? Do we, you know, and all that. And I know it's a very long story. I mean, I've written a bit about it in the book on Paradigm Initiative that I'm putting together now. But one key lesson for me there, which is important because you mentioned this, is that many times as leaders, people don't know how much of a need you have for things like, in fact, many times the things you care about people for the most are signals of the things you need the most. So when you're looking at people and saying, how are you doing? How's the work going? More often than not, if someone asks you the same question, a huge burden could go off your shoulders. You know, moments where I remember once a colleague walked up to me and said, how are you? Of course, I said, fine. I mean, what do we say? Fine. And he said, no, sit down. How are you? Because we just had one of those tough conversations, and we still have them. And it was about salaries. Someone has said, my salary is terrible, and all that. And he said, I don't know how you feel right now, but I know you have to find money to do what you have to do. But I just wanted to let you know you're not alone. I mean, I teared up a bit, hugged him and said thank you. And I think in that moment, I also realized one of the things that I still do today, making sure that I have other leaders around me as friends, not just as leaders, people that I can talk to. And I'm just going to come back to you. How do you handle circumstances like that? It doesn't have to involve accidents and things like that, but when there is a problem and you're in the driver's seat, what do you do? And also, what do you think about what I just shared and what Sandra said earlier in terms of leaders caring for everyone else and at times looking around themselves and like, hey, is anyone going to ask me if I had breakfast or something? Or if I've been paid, everyone else has been paid, and things like that.
Well, I think it's part of my personality to not get desperate about things and to act. I have a brother who's a musician. When I was 13 years old and he had 11 years old, we were going to the class of music with our guitars and our bicycles. And my brother somehow, he confused the position of the bike, but he fell from the bike and he hit his head on a car which was parking. And he passed, like he fainted or passed out. I could be completely desperate, but I was really fast in like calling the ambulance, advising people to stop the cars in the road and getting things done. And this happened when I was 13 years old. And when I have a parent who, I don't know, is in the hospital, I never get desperate and start crying. I usually I want to talk to the doctor and talk to the folks involved and understand what can be done. So I think this is part of the personality of not getting desperate on situations. I know many people, they get desperate, and I don't judge, and I think each person has one personality. I think mine one is favorable for this more, I don't know, cool down and let's just act fast. But regarding the position in how to solve complex problems, I think one solution that we had, and I think this is a good solution for those thinking on starting an NGO or being the director, we chose a model in which I'm not alone. I'm not the only executive director. We started an NGO in which we were a couple. So in the beginning, it was me and Bruno. And then after 3 years of NGO, we decided to put Mariana together with us. She's a fantastic leader and very aware of like the emotions and perceptions of people. So she blended with more knowledge and a different type of personality. And I think this was important because, well, we're always in 3 people discussing and helping each other. When it is needed, we can call other directors of other NGOs and say, hey, we have a huge problem here. We need to talk. We need some advice, you know. And because the Brazilian Coalition on Digital Rights is a big one, we started 6 years ago when I founded the coalition in Brazil with 12 organizations. Now we are in 55. So there is a big group in which we can call each other. I wouldn't say I can call all those 55 organizations. Of course, I have my favorite 5 ones in which I trust them and I call them. But this is really good. So my advice would be also to somehow collectivize the approach on being this active director, because it must be really, really lonely to be the single one. I never had experience, but I think it's a really, really lonely one.
Is it?
I wanted to say something that I think before I became the executive director, I used to think that being a leader is really, those people, those guys are enjoying the leadership, that there's no work. But what I can tell people is that I think being a leader is something that every one of you in this room should really experience, because it makes you a better person, honestly. I remember there was a time a friend from another organization came to me and was like, Sandra, you know, our current leader, blah, blah, blah. I was like, but have you talked to them about this issue? Do they know? Because also as a leader, you need to be in a position whereby you create an environment where the team are able to provide for you feedback. Yeah, because that way you're also able to learn. There was something I wanted to also innovate, sort of having a one-on-one discussion with the team of, do you feel your role is really giving you enough capacity to perform? Do you think your skill is being utilized? What do you think should be done best? So when I had the discussion with that friend of mine, I was like, I told the person that, you know, it's not easy to be a leader. Even though the person is doing this, they might not be aware, but it's by having conversation with them that they will be aware of what the problem is. And even though they are stubborn leaders, support them because they need the support. And what I would say is that for you to strive, you need to be in a good term with your leaders. Guys in the room, please be in good terms with your leaders. That's all I can say. But I don't know what the experience has been for you, Ben.
Oh, no. What you say about feedback is absolutely important. And I say this, you know, at PIN all the time. We have some tough conversations. You know, so sometime last year, there were certain things I noticed. You know, like, you can always tell when people have questions, but are not asking the questions. And so we decided to do what was called at the time employee satisfaction survey. My colleagues know that I hate that word employee. There's a certain ring to it that I don't like, but it is what it is. And the feedback was pretty brutal, including for me. And at some point, one of my colleagues was saying, oh, you know, let me paraphrase what was said. And I said, listen, tell me exactly how it was said. And I think this is one of the challenges of being the leader of any group. There will always be a gap between what people feel and what you will know if there's no feedback mechanism, if there's no opportunity. Because at some point when we talked about, let's have a frank conversation, let's put all the information out there and let's talk about it, there were some concerns. Like, what if we talk about it and the entire organization scatters and things like that? But we had a conversation and we realized that this was very helpful. Openness is a very, very helpful policy. The one-on-one thing you talked about was something that we sort of institutionalized and then transitioned into, you know what, this is now an open door policy. I used to call it ED Open Office. So it didn't have to be about work. In fact, all of the conversations I had were not about work. There were very few of them that were really about work. They were about personal careers, and I think it was very helpful. It was very helpful because one of the challenges with leadership getting secondary information is that secondary information is processed. And to be honest, the person who's reporting to you, they are great, they are wonderful, but everybody processes information and will share it with you. And more often than not, in processing that information, they will either consciously or unconsciously leave out tiny details, in quotes, that may actually be very helpful. I remember at some point, and this has been practical, there are some points someone at PIN said something, I'm trying to remember the phrase. Oh yes, said that I'm very stingy. You know, as a person, that I'm very stingy. I don't like spending money. And the person who passed on that information to me was a bit concerned about sharing it. And I said to her, please, what exactly was this that this person said? When she said it, I knew it was paraphrased. So I said, tell me the exact phrase. And then she told me the exact phrase. And the interesting thing was that at that point, my reaction wasn't, oh my God, someone said something terrible. My immediate reaction was, why did they say this? I reached out to finance and found out that actually, this was I think just after COVID lockdowns and things like that, we had made a mistake. There was some funding we had which was supposed to go to team members that didn't go to team members. And because I, as the leader, had assumed that, well, the vouchers have been approved, and one of the things I don't do at PIN is I don't sign checks, I don't approve payments, except it's maybe a payment from the COO that needs someone to approve it. You know, a few days before we pay salaries, it goes to the CEO, she approves. If she's on leave, of course, then it comes to me. And so I missed that. But if that person had not called me stingy, I wouldn't have asked for an investigation, which then led to us discovering that, oh my God, we hadn't done this. And I think this is one of the reasons why it's important to make sure that, you know, feedback is direct as much as possible. I want to send a few mics into the room, into the... Okay, all right. Someone can't wait. Do we have other mics, or do you want me to come in? Okay, we have other mics. All right, for time management purposes, we have 30 minutes. Can I see a few? I want to see the first set of hands. So we've got 3. Okay, great. 4. All right. So that will be 1, 2, then she's 3, and she's 4. I mean, I've mixed up 3 and 4. My apologies. But I think I saw her first. Okay.
Thank you very much. This was very good, and I'm really inspired. I have 2 questions. The first question is, it goes without saying that leadership has a lot to do with the personality of the leader. Many times, when a different leader comes to lead the exact same set of people, you might experience something different from the same set of people. You know, and so my question is, how do you balance navigating your personality? You know, like you said, there are different types of people. How do you navigate balancing the type of personality that you have with getting results from the people that you are leading? Okay, so that's one. And the second thing is, when you're leading people, you know, there's a level of excellence and attention to detail and priority that you have to your work. And sometimes it's very difficult to delegate because you don't believe that many times they'll be up to the task. But you finally get to the point where you say, you know what, I'm not going to kill myself. If we're going to grow, I have to delegate. And you start to delegate, and they aren't giving great results. And you are training and training and training, but the results aren't coming. How do you transfer, for lack of better words, pardon my Coco language, how do you transfer the spirit of excellence to the people that you are leading? How do you make them think like you? How do you make them see things the way that you see it without putting too much pressure on them? Thank you.
Let's have this. We'll have the 4 questions together, and then I'm sure Raphael and
I want to.
Okay. I was hoping we could do another round after the 4, but okay, we'll take 5. We'll take 5. My God says we won't have a chance to take another round.
Thank you. My question is straight and forward. I want to. It seems the 3 organizations try to work in a bit repressive government. I was trying to chat a bit with him earlier, and so how do you keep going? Especially when you, and I know Uganda is not an exception, trying to do digital rights, trying to move on in a repressive system of government. So the second thing is that I know privacy also has an event, and where in starting up, how do you build collaboration? How do you sift collaboration? How you decide what collaboration to go with as you go an event that drives digital rights like this? Thank you.
Okay, let's have number 3. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. My question is around strategic leadership and technical leadership, because as executive directors, that your positions are a combination of both. So how do you manage delusions and entitlement within technical leadership roles to ensure, I mean, most of us work in roles where we are accountable to the donors or to the funder. So how do you balance that to still ensure that you achieve your deliverables to the funder or the donor against delusions and entitlement?
Could you please, if you don't mind, a bit more specific on what's the source of this delusion? You as the leader or the partner?
Not as the leader, but rather I don't like to use the word subordinates. It has
or your colleagues?
Your colleagues,
okay.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, hello. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing your experiences. And I like the idea about having a shared leadership group where you could share your experiences. It's very much important. My question goes to you all about loyalty. Starting up a group with people who are being loyal from the start, and then at the point you realize that they are beginning to have different interests. But then they've been loyal. When do you have to come in and say, well, I think you are being loyal, but it's time for you to move on. This is a very tough position. And also you realize that starting a group, you might have some people who might be interested but might not have the skills. Yes, but you really have to kind of achieve your goals. And then how do you manage these people? It takes a great leader to do that, but then how do you kind of manage the situation, having people who are interested but do not have the skills, and then those who have the skills but they want to have some form of provisions met before, and then you can't meet those provisions at the start? Yes.
Welcome to the club. Number 5.
Okay, thank you. Insightful discussion. There are many good leaders. There are very few masterful leaders. And my question, of course, comes to the point of In your leadership, how do you incorporate the aspect of mentorship and coaching towards a successful handover or towards a masterful transition? Because I'm sure you have noticed with many organizations, transitions take forever. We have taken almost 1.5 years to find another leader, so yeah.
All right, thank you. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 questions. I'll let Sandra maybe, start with 2 or 3 questions, Raphael 2 or 3 questions, and I'll take the last 2 or 3.
Okay, so I think the first person asked about personality and results. I'll share an experience. Personally, I would say I'm someone who is a perfectionist. I used to pay a lot of attention to even a full stop, starting the capital letters and all that. I think I've worked with Benga. Benga might have realized. So now that is it. Moving from that aspect whereby maybe you're in a subordinate role to being a leader, first of all, one thing that you need to understand is that you're different, you're not the same. You'll find some colleagues are really like fast in their work. Some of them are not fast in their work. Some of them really do work well. And that's why the aspect of strengthening teamwork and identifying the strength in the team is great. For example, if you know that someone is very good at mobilization of various stakeholders, then that's what they do. If you know this person is good at this aspect, then that's what you could do. Because as civil society organization especially, one of the things that I really strengthened when I joined my role was the aspect of communications, because I believe that communication is one aspect that can either break you or make you. So being able to have that sort of a person that maybe look at maybe the work of staff was really key for me. So I would like to share that in terms of my experience in terms of perfectionism. So that's what I would say to ensure that work is moving on well, result is being provided. So the aspect of identifying strength and also understanding your team, knowing what is the strength that each of them bring on board. And then how do you start transfer and spirit of excellence? I think what I would say is that one thing as a leader is, as I said before, is understanding the team. The spirit of excellence is, I think, through teamwork. And there are various ways that we have done this, especially through using various tools such as Google Docs for those who work remotely, but also being open to providing feedback to the team to ensure that they excel well. For example, when we are in DRIF, you know, I came with my colleague, and we usually provide feedback, you know, how did I do, what do you think I did not do right? And again, it's not only for me to give it to him, he also gives it to me. So that is it, being in the sense of knowing that as a leader, you're not perfect. Again, we are not even the best, by the way. It doesn't mean that if you're a leader, you are the best actually in the organization. But I don't know how leadership comes to people. Like I also say that I didn't believe that I would become a leader. So the aspects of building collaboration, I think for me, it's about doing good work. Do good work. Your name is the only thing that you have. The name of the organization is the only thing that you have. Of course, there will always be challenges, but ensure that for you to build collaboration with people, you need to do what, let's say, that donor or a partner would want, and also be keen to listen, to seek feedback, accept feedback. Of course, you have the deliberation of maybe saying that, also providing that, oh no, I don't think this is right. Yeah, so for me, I would say that is the aspect of collaboration for me, having a strong communication team in place, having integration of advocacy work in place. I think that is how we have been able to build collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Raphael, 2 or 3 questions.
Okay, thanks for the questions, really interesting questions. I would start with the matter of how to deal with the type of personality. I think this is a really important question. We have a deal in our NGO that all 3 directors, they must do psychoanalysis. They must be very aware of their type of personalities. This really helps because, for instance, I have a type of personality which is a relational one. So I like to validate the knowledge and the opinions with most of the people around me. And I like to go very deep and verticalize the conversations for a long time. If I'm aware of that, I can know the limits, the obstacles, and the problems of doing that. And sometimes that can be really problematic. Sometimes people say, Zanata, you must stop talking and decide, or you must stop going so deep. You know, we must be more pragmatic. And this is the kind of thing you learn when you have openness and others can tell you directly the problems of your personality. And this is something we do on positive feedback on us. We ask the coordinators, what do you think about us? I mean, are there any problems in our personality? And they can openly say it. And this is really important for self-awareness and also psychoanalysis, I would say. And the problem of loyalty, I think this is a very complex question. I think the connection between trust and loyalty is a very fundamental one in the work of NGO. I could not work with someone that I don't feel comfortable, and I know that that person will be, if she has a problem, she will bring to us first, and she will tell us first, and that we will have the openness and the policies to deal with the situation. If we feel this trust, and if we feel there is no loyalty, it's impossible to work. We had cases with many people that we lost the trust. Loyalty is like energy, you know? And if you lose it, you cannot run. And I would just mention briefly the problem of strategic leadership and the technical leadership and the quality. Because this is something, we started the NGO in 4 people. And it's like startup culture. You do everything, you know? I wrote all the reports. I did all the research. I was responsible for supervising the methodology of all those researchers. I was responsible for shooting the images to publish the videos, you know, and doing the media strategy. And then, of course, we grew, and then we had excellent people coming from the communication field to be content and communications coordinators, and excellent people to become coordinators in the themes that we work. And now we are in 28 people, so we have coordinators which are excellent. They have their PhDs or masters in their areas, and we feel in a very comfortable position to trust that, you know, you need to stop doing micromanagement and stop being boring and wanting to reveal everything. But of course, if you're doing like a Supreme Court case, like we're doing this week in Brazil, we have a Supreme Court case. I must reveal all the legal arguments of the Supreme Court case. This is really important, you know? Or if we are preparing a speech, I don't know, for the opening session of Net Mundial next week on internet governance, this is extremely important. So we make a clear separation for the coordinators on which are the kind of work that has a specific political dimension in which we must step in. And this is the kind of the fine-tuning that we do for that. But for us, it was like also like deconstructing many of our beliefs that we needed to be in everything. And this was a process, a very long process. And we also needed help. We actually had people, consultants, helping us in how to decrease the amount of work to be more strategic. So this kind of professional support, I think, is also important if you can do it.
I see that Sandra skipped the question of how to keep going. I thought you were going one after the other, but it's okay, it's okay. I can speak to that, and there are three questions here. One is, how do you keep going in a repressive environment? And I think this is really important, because many times when we start working, we don't know how many vested interests you go up against. I remember my first shock when I got invited by the security services in Nigeria, and they showed me a newspaper article and said, "Who is your sponsor?" And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, who is giving you money to go against the government on data protection? And I looked at this guy like, it's my data. And he's like, no, who is your sponsor? So it's important for you to know that you will go against people who will assume that you have other reasons why you do what you do. The good news is that it gets better. Integrity matters. Persistence matters. Over time, the people who would normally assume that you're doing this for selfish interests will realize that if he's been doing this since 2002 and he's still doing it in 2024, maybe this guy is really not, faking it. 22 years? He's probably not pretending. And two things I wrote down here. One, please be a comfortable activist. I can't say this enough. One of the reasons why many times we compromise or we get into trouble is because we focus so much on the activism and we don't pay attention to how we will pay the bills. I told a story yesterday at one of the sessions how I met a bag of money in my room. And the only reason I didn't take it was because someone was already giving me something that was probably much more than that already for the work I was doing. So it's important for you to make sure that take care of yourself before you not before. While you're taking care of the country or the continent, make sure you're taking care of. One of the first decisions I made about Paradigm Initiative is that it must become an institution that can pay me a comfortable salary that would make me look in any government official's eyes and say, you're a fool, and not be scared that, I won't have money to pay the next, to pay the next bill. So it's important to, while you're saving the world, don't forget to save yourself. And I think it goes to models and talking to other people and saying to them, how do I make sure that I have resources? And also have a support system. The three layers of a support system that I have. One is at home. When everything goes wrong and I walk into my house, I walk into a space where there's no judgment, where my wife understands that, okay, something is wrong. And she's like, calm down. And even when everyone else, including some of my colleagues, say, Benga, you're doing too much, she's able to say to me that, okay, explain to me. And at times, even just explaining to her, I hear myself say things like, oh, wow, and it's very helpful. And I think it's also for your colleagues. Someone in my office came with something on our screen that said, work with your colleagues. You didn't come to the office to make friends or something like that. The irony of it is that she's one of the people in the office who is actually most friendly with people. So it's obvious that she's not preaching, don't be friends. But you must have people within your organization who you can talk to beyond work. Otherwise, if I'm a lawyer and you're a lawyer and all we talk about every time is litigation, we'll both burn out. Once in a while, I should be able to tell you that, oh, my son broke his arm. And you won't say, Benga, please move on, what next? So there's a support system at home, and it doesn't have to be, if you're not married, you have friends, people who can be very honest with you and tell you at times that this litigation thing you're doing, are you sure it's not an ego thing? Support system at work, and also, this may sound strange, a support system within governments and the institutions that you're campaigning against. How does that happen? There are people who went to primary school with you, who went to secondary school with you, who now work in those institutions, who know you and trust you. one of the biggest leaks in Nigeria that eventually led to, the Occupy Nigeria protests and things like that, the person who sent me that document before I made it public was someone who I grew up with in the same town and worked in the Ministry of Finance, leaked the document, resigned, and left Nigeria. It led to protests and many things and things like that. Of course, there were other issues around. So it's at times important. When Twitter was shut down in Nigeria, the first call I got was from the Vice President's office. I won't mention names, but when I write my book, I'll put the name. The person said, Benga, I know you want to sue. Please go and sue. The government is gone now, so it's okay. I'm sure it's already public knowledge. Because it was the information minister who was saying, shut it down, shut it down. The VP's office didn't want it shut down. So the person said, go and sue, go and sue. When you sue, we'll find documents and support you and things like that. So have a support system of friends or partners, have a support system at work, and please have a support system within, the institutions you fight, in quotes, against. There's a question about managing delusions and entitlement by your colleagues. How did I do this? Because I've had to. I've had honest conversations with colleagues and told them, listen, I've done the same thing before. I've been deluded. I've assumed that the world will never continue without me. But the truth is, the world will roll even when you're gone. How you tell them matters. There's something that I usually do. I buy you a book. Because talking at times, people may not understand what you're saying. Buy them a book titled, You Are Not the Center of the World. They'll get the message. Or, if it helps, someone who they trust, who they laugh a lot with, tell the person, not in a gossip style manner, like this person will put a lead above their career if they don't do this. I found out that many times when I have those conversations with people, they get angry at times, but there is no one I've had that conversation with that has not come back. Some of them it takes 10 years to say thank you. In fact, if you don't have those conversations with them, you're not helping them. When they realize that you had a chance to tell them and you didn't, somewhere in their minds they'll blame you. So if anyone has that, I've been there. I've assumed that Nigeria cannot make progress without Benga Sheson. And then I realized at some point, oh boy, if you are gone today, somebody else will come up. So it's important to have those conversations with them. And if they still don't get it, this is tricky. But you need to find someone else who can do the same thing they do and put both of them on a project. It sends a message. It sends a message. I can't say more. In terms of mentorship and coaching towards a successful transition. Oh, yes, of course. I knew you would ask that, Ronald. There are two sides to this. So there's mentorship and there's coaching. I think any leader who doesn't have a mentor is set up for failure. A few friends of mine and I have a case we're dealing with right now. A friend of ours who is a pastor, who literally doesn't listen to anyone, and he's done some of the most stupid things in the world. And we've told him, but when he walks into his audience on Sunday and he sees the thousands of people and they call him Papa, he forgets anything he's done wrong. So I think it's really important to have someone who can slap your head. One way to do that is find someone on your board who is your critic. I was saying that to a group earlier today. There are 4 categories of people on the board at Paradigm Initiative. There is my fan, someone who loves me to death, who will say anywhere he goes that Benga is the best thing since sliced bread. I don't need to mention his name. My colleagues know him. They've listened to him. We told him to write a foreword for our strategic management plan, and he was literally writing as if he was writing me a birthday congratulations message. You also need a critic. Someone who will slap your head when you do something wrong, while others, because we praise people a lot. On day 1 of DRIF, people were telling me, congratulations, someone told me this is the best event, and I'm like, power hasn't gone off yet. But seriously, you need a critic. The third you need is someone who has failed at what you are trying to do before, but has succeeded in something else. Because we need failure lessons. That second category, it's a woman on our board who was very upset with me, and then I realized, wait, she's one of the few people among my mentors who have told me, I'm very upset with you. And I was like, please join our board. And she was confused, like, I said, I'm angry with you. I said, yes, please join the board for that reason. Until today, I mean, Nena knows who it is. Till today, when we have board meetings and every board member is saying, well done, well done, she says, wait a minute, have we done this? Those kind of mentors. And finally, somebody who doesn't care about you, who doesn't give a hoot, but who understands the vision. Because many times as leaders, we surround ourselves with people who are our fans. And this is one of the biggest problems in the Global South, by the way, with governance. All our boards, almost all our boards are made up of our friends, and so they can't tell us when something is going wrong. And on that transition issue, don't do what I did. I set a date, I told the board, and they said no. And there was no alternative. And then I set a new date, and I told them, and now we're managing it better. Because I didn't just tell them. I also demonstrated to them, you know, we've hired a COO, we have the senior people working with us, and I showed them during the last board meeting, just a few days ago, like, this is our funding for Q1 2024, and I wasn't involved in more than 30% of this. So it means that if I'm not here, PIN will continue to run. Because the important thing is your transition is not your transition as a leader. It's your transition, it is the business of the board to elect the next leader of the organization. So you can't just do what I did the first time. And I fixed the date, my birthday in 2017. I was going to go. And the board said no. And it was quite interesting. But I think it's also important to realize that the transition is from the top all the way across. I mean, one of the things, I mean, Nena is my CEO, and we have this thing we talk about, 2 at the top, which is, you know, the reference you're making to co-leadership, to say that it's not about the transition of the leader alone, it's also about transitions of the assistants. If an assistant or if an officer leaves, who takes over? If a senior officer leaves, 5 minutes, who takes over? If a manager leaves, someone asked me here this week, one of my colleagues, you know, he or she, deliberate, he or she said, what would you do if this person left the team? And I paused. I mean, former me, I would have responded immediately. Our PIN continues, but I've gone for training recently on emotional intelligence, the 90-second pause. And I had to think about it. What do we truly honestly do? And the first thing that came to mind was a conversation I was already having with Nena about how do we fill gaps? How do we make sure that, because we've been there at PIN where someone leaves and things suffer. Everything in that region suffers. And so now, and I think I'm glad those things happened, because now we're building resilience into the system so that it will not be a problem. All right. I will yield the last 2 minutes to both of you for your, you know, I said we won't have another round. My apologies for that. You know, if you could take a minute each, what are some of the things that you haven't talked about but you would like to leave with this group before we go?
Okay, so I think I will start from where you stopped, Benga. What would you do? I think that is one of the strategy that I have embraced. First of all, if we have like a staff that is doing something, I'll make sure that someone is aware of what is going on. And then the aspect of ensuring that you build the capacity of everyone. Because you wake up the next day and someone has left. And again, you also need to embrace the fact that people should grow their career and they should also transition, just in the fact that you should also put yourself, you know, mine is different from Benga because Benga founded Paradigm Initiative. So you can decide to be the executive director, maybe for life. But putting yourself in the shoe of your colleague, if you want something best for yourself, you should probably want the best for your staff. So being aware that when you've recruited this person, also you should also plan for their exit. That's the best I could say in regards to that. When someone has come, plan for how, if this person has left, what would you do without them? You know, what are the skills that this person has that someone on the team does not have? How can they work together to build each other? So I think that is one thing that I've also embraced. And also adding on to what my comrades from Nigeria ask about, how do we keep going? I think one of the best partner that I've really embraced, that has really helped me in this in this leadership is workout. Guys, you're just stressed from work, but when you go to the gym and shower, you feel alive, you wake up very fresh, you feel you're not stressed anymore. I think that is one thing that people really do not talk about, the aspect of being able to have time for yourself, and also for your well-being. That is also very important. And how do I keep going? I think the aspect of mentorship that Benga talked about. When we talk about mentorship, don't look at the people, like Benga said, people who really tell you the truth in black and white. And also don't look at professional mentors. Look at people who are able to guide you in your life outside work, which is also very important. And another thing is also identifying who has the power. You know, you don't need to, you wouldn't want to, for your work to go on, you need to identify who has the power. I'll give an example of how we've been able to do collaboration, especially with the government. Of course, they love money, and that is one of the aspects that you will go on to ensure that you give them what they want, you also have what you want. So what we have been trying to do is identify who has the power, and we've been working with Uganda Women's Parliamentary Association in Uganda, who really can mobilize over 30 MPs for a gathering. So knowing who has the power, like also Benga said, is very important. And also, just to summarize, sorry, Benga, I think someone asked about how do you deal with a team member who is interested and not skilled, who might also be skilled but not interested. I think for me, one thing I've learned about leadership is be available. Unskilled, not skilled, are you willing to learn? If you're willing to learn, let's learn. So for me, that is it. It doesn't matter if you're not skilled. If you're willing to learn, that is the best way that you can learn, or you can also progress yourself, because I've learned a lot from being able to volunteer my time and also support team members. You learn a lot from them. They think you're the expert, but you're actually learning from each other. So that is what I would wanted to add on.
Thank you so much. Please put your hands together. Just to underline the last thing you said, to say, in summary, you can teach skill, but you can't teach passion or interest.
Thank you. Thanks for this really pleasant conversation. It's like a collective therapy, and I do like that a lot. I would say two things. First, on the problem of collaboration, I think the message is to lead by example. Like, if you're leading a team and you're saying, folks, come on, you need to collaborate among your teams, but you as director do not collaborate with other directors or other coalitions, it doesn't make sense. But if they see me here in Ghana in the alliance with Paradigm and NAPTI, if they see me with journalists and coalitions doing a lot of collaboration, then it's organic. Then the message that I can tell them to collaborate resonates with my own example. This is really important to not generate hypocrisy in what you're saying. And finally, now we're really concerned about flourishing the skills of the next generation. And this reminds me of how lucky I was, because I worked for two organizations, one think tank and one NGO, and my bosses were great women. And they let me flourish, you know, in those moments when I told you this story of 2016, my boss, Elise, she was 65 years old, very experienced woman, and she was like, Rafael, you are the person to deal with this complex situation, and I trust you. And this was a moment of letting me flourish. You know, if she was a boss, to be controlling and say, no, come on, everything must go to me first, I do not trust you, I wouldn't have the chance. So this is the reflection we're making, like to let people flourish in their capacities. And this takes not only courage, but also time. So we need to this must be a process, not something that you do like at once.
Ladies and gentlemen, yes, please go ahead, put your hands together. Please help me say thank you to Sandra and Raphael for accepting to have this Ask Me Anything conversation. Apologies that we couldn't take more questions, but this conversation continues. We're all on the app, on Woover. Reach out, ask questions, ask for email addresses, and I'm sure you know you're seated with other leaders in the room who have answers to some of the questions you haven't asked or that we may not have answered completely. So thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of DRIF.
Thank you. A round of applause for our panelists. And please, you're reminded that we will be premiering the movie or launching the movie. So please, it's at 6:45 and there will be dinner. So please endeavor to stay behind, enjoy yourself. You can have discussions, network, and meet other people whilst you are waiting. Thank you very much and have a nice evening.
Take it or leave me to it.